I should have known. That night, I found the airline ticket wedged inside the pocket of Zach's jacket, a crumpled receipt from a hotel in Chicago. His business trip, the one he'd told me about just a few days earlier, he was gone for meetings. Didn't add up. Not at all. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest as I stared at the small, innocuous piece of paper. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was just a mistake. But the gut feeling that had been gnawing at me for weeks was suddenly too loud to ignore. Zach's absence had been growing longer and more frequent. At first, I had thought nothing of it. He was a vice president at a growing tech company, and these trips were just part of his job. He'd always been dedicated. Work came first, but he made time for us when he could. He was charming, attentive, and for all the years we'd been together, I never suspected him of being anything but loyal. But this felt different. I was folding laundry in our bedroom when I found it. The ticket, the receipt. And then, my mind began to spiral. The dates didn't match. He told me he was leaving on a Sunday, but this ticket was for a Thursday, a day he claimed to be in meetings. I tried to brush it off. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't the type of wife to go snooping, to dig through his stuff. But there I was, staring at this tiny fragment of evidence. I clutched the paper in my hand, the ink smudging beneath my fingers as the room felt too small, too suffocating. I should have just walked away, let it go, but I couldn't. Something inside me snapped, and I found myself walking down the stairs, phone in hand, my mind racing as I dialed his number. "Olivia, is everything okay?" Zach's voice crackled on the other end, distant as usual. "Where are you right now, Zach?" My voice sounded calmer than I felt, but my fingers trembled on the edge of the counter. "I'm in Chicago. Meetings ran late. You know how it is." He sounded tired, but I couldn't shake the feeling of distance in his tone. It wasn't just from the trip. It was something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. "I thought you were supposed to be back by tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, but it came out more like a statement than a question. "Well, I had to extend the trip. I'll be home in a day or two," he replied. There was hesitation, a split second where his words faltered. He was lying. I didn't press him any further, but the seed of doubt was planted. A whisper in my ear, one I couldn't ignore. I hung up the phone, my stomach in knots, and returned to the bedroom, staring at the ticket in my hand. It was like looking at a mirror, one that reflected all the cracks in our marriage that I had refused to see until now. We had always been a good match. Zach was a planner, organized, precise, a man who lived by his schedule. And me? I was spontaneous, driven by the chaos of creativity, my career, always in flux. We balanced each other. His stability kept me grounded, and my unpredictability kept him on his toes. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. Our early years were a whirlwind. College sweethearts who had everything figured out. Our wedding, our home, and the dream job I had just launched. Zach was the type of guy you'd bring home to your parents. Polished, charming, reliable. I was the opposite. Loud, impulsive, a little bit wild. We complemented each other. Or so I thought. It wasn't always perfect. The little things would get under my skin. The constant work trips, his late nights in the office, but nothing out of the ordinary. I chalked it up to his ambition. I respected it. After all, I had my own career to nurture, and we supported each other, even if it meant being apart more often than I would have liked. But over the past few months, something shifted. Zach started coming home later, disappearing more frequently. Our intimate moments became sparse. The warm, spontaneous conversations we used to have started to feel forced. I chalked it up to stress, to his workload, but deep down, a small, quiet voice told me something wasn't right. I brushed it off. I loved him. I trusted him. But then, there was that ticket. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The hotel receipt, the dates, the lies. That's when I made the decision. I couldn't just ignore this. I needed answers. It was late the next night when I found the courage to confront him. He'd just walked through the door, his tired eyes giving away nothing, his briefcase in hand. I had rehearsed 1,000 different conversations in my mind, each one more frantic than the last, but as soon as he stepped into the house, my anger froze in my throat. "Zach," I began, my voice steady, too steady. "I found something today." He dropped his briefcase on the floor and turned to face me, his face unreadable. "What do you mean?" His eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no sign of panic, no sense that he knew what was coming. "This," I said, holding up the airline ticket. I was calm, but I felt my heart slamming against my rib cage. "You told me you were in Chicago. You told me that you were there for work, but you didn't tell me you were there on Thursday. You didn't tell me about the hotel." His face went pale. For a moment, his lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. Olivia, I can explain," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, avoiding mine. "Explain?" I asked, my voice rising now. "How do you explain this, Zach?" There was a long silence, the tension thick in the air. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't even looking at the ticket. Instead, his gaze dropped to the floor as if it could hide him from what was coming next. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice shaky. But I wasn't ready for what came after. I thought I was prepared for his confession, but nothing had quite prepared me for the devastation of hearing him say, "I'm sorry." The apology wasn't for the affair. It wasn't for the lies. It was a half-hearted, vague apology for something that hadn't even been fully admitted. He was sorry I found out. Sorry I had to confront him. Sorry that I wasn't handling things well. It wasn't enough. I wanted to scream, to shout, to throw every painful word I had at him, but I didn't. Something in me kept me still. I was too numb to move, too exhausted to cry. The worst part? I already knew I couldn't fix this. I had been seeing the cracks for months now, but now that the truth was on the table, I was left to stare at it, completely unprepared. I turned away from him then, pacing in the living room, fighting the urge to throw my phone out the window. "Who is she, Zach?" I asked quietly, my voice almost a whisper. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care. His silence spoke volumes. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The air between us felt impossibly thick, and I felt like I was drowning in it. I needed space. I needed a plan. I needed control. I left him standing in the living room, unable to look me in the eye, and went straight to the office, locking the door behind me. I couldn't let the betrayal swallow me whole. I wasn't just his wife. I was a woman who could take back control. I'd done it before, when I launched my own business. I didn't need him to survive, to thrive. But this was different. This was personal. The next morning, I woke up early, unable to sleep through the weight of the situation. My hands were still trembling, and I knew I had to keep moving. I had to gather the facts before I could make any decisions. I couldn't let him, or her, make the choice for me. I grabbed my laptop and began searching. There was no telling where this would lead, but I had a gut feeling I wasn't going to like it. I started with the most obvious thing, his emails. It wasn't the first time I'd checked his phone, but this time felt different, more urgent. I needed to know everything. I needed to see her name. I didn't know how I'd justify it to myself, but there was something so raw about the act of uncovering the truth. Each click felt like I was peeling away at the last layer of the life I thought I knew. First, I checked his email. It wasn't the most obvious place to start, but I felt an odd sense of determination. If I could get to the root of this, then maybe I could face whatever came next. He was good at locking down his personal accounts, but I'd once convinced him to set up a joint inbox for us to manage our bills. I'd forgotten about it, but now it felt like the perfect opportunity. The password was the same as it always had been, his old football number. I logged in, heart pounding as I clicked through dozens of archived emails about meetings, business trips, and flights. The mundane noise of daily life, but I was looking for something specific. There it was, a string of emails from a woman named Megan. The subject line read, "Meet me at the hotel on Thursday." I froze. My stomach lurched. I clicked. The exchange was so casual, so comfortable. I could almost hear their voices as I read the messages. Megan. "Hey, looking forward to seeing you tonight. I hope your meetings went well." Zach. "Can't wait. I'll be there around 8. I miss you." It wasn't just an affair. it was more than that. It was the kind of relationship I had been waiting for him to have with me, the kind of connection that, over the years, had become so rare between us. My heart ached as I read further. Their tone was so casual, so intimate. They weren't sneaking around. They were comfortable in this betrayal. I kept scrolling, finding more text exchanges, details of hotel bookings, dinners, trips. It was like a gut punch, each email confirming the painful truth. I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop against the wall, but I stayed still, just reading, because it was all I had left. There was one email in particular that stood out. It was from Megan, and it had a single line that made my blood run cold. Megan, when will you tell Olivia? It's getting harder to hide this. I slammed the laptop shut. The weight of it was unbearable. This had been going on longer than I'd thought. The betrayal wasn't just a random affair. It was a carefully crafted deception, and he had been lying to me for months. The intimacy that I had once believed was reserved for us alone was now shared with another woman. A woman who had been playing her part for far too long. I needed more. I wasn't about to let him off the hook with just this. I needed receipts. Hard, undeniable proof that I could use to confront him again, this time with the truth in hand. No more games. I spent the next few hours piecing together what I could find. I went through the financial records, looking for strange charges that could tie to the hotel stays. Sure enough, there it was. An expensive dinner charge at a restaurant in Chicago that matched the date of his supposed business trip. I printed it out. One more piece of the puzzle. I also dug deeper into Megan's social media profiles. It wasn't easy, but I found enough to put the pieces together. She wasn't just some random affair partner. She worked in the same industry as Zach. In fact, she had worked on several projects with him. It made sense, in a twisted way. They'd built this together, one lie at a time. The most damning piece came later that night. While scrolling through a photo album that had been left open on Zach's tablet, I found a picture of the two of them at a rooftop bar, laughing, arms around each other. The smile on Zach's face made my stomach turn. It was a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. That was it. I had enough. But there was one thing I hadn't yet accounted for: my confrontation. I spent hours thinking about how I was going to confront Zach again. I knew he would lie. I knew he would do anything to cover it up. I even thought about leaving, packing my bags and walking out without a word. But something stopped me. It was the need for closure. The need to make him admit everything. But what if it all crumbled? What if he blamed me? What if I wasn't strong enough to face him head on? For a brief moment, I questioned whether I was making the right choice. The weight of the betrayal threatened to crush me. But then I remembered something my mother had always told me. You're stronger than you think. I had to face this. Not just for me, but for the woman I used to be. The one who never allowed herself to be a victim. The one who could fight back. Tomorrow I would confront him, and this time there would be no turning back. I could feel the tremor in my hands as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, reapplying the lipstick that had worn off from the stress of the last few days. My reflection stared back at me, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't recognize myself. Who was this woman about to face her husband with all the damning proof of his infidelity? Not the woman who had once loved blindly, who had clung to the idea that things would get better. No, I was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who wouldn't take the easy way out, even though every fiber of my being screamed to pack my things and leave. I heard Zach moving around downstairs, his footsteps slow, deliberate, like he knew something was coming. We hadn't spoken since that awful morning, and now, after everything I had uncovered, the time had come. I grabbed the stack of papers from the desk, the printed emails, the financial receipts, the pictures of him and Megan, and made my way down to the living room where he was sitting, waiting for me. He looked up when I entered, his face tense. There was guilt written all over him, but also the same cocky arrogance I'd seen so many times before. This time, though, I wasn't intimidated. "Olivia," he started, his voice cautious, I know we need to talk." I didn't let him finish. I took a deep breath, then slapped the stack of papers down onto the coffee table with a force that made him flinch. "Yeah, we do," I said, my voice calm, too calm. I sat across from him, keeping eye contact, refusing to look away. He shifted uncomfortably, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crack. "This is what you've been up to, huh?" I pulled out the first email, reading it aloud. "Can't wait. I'll be there around 8. I miss you." I let the words hang in the air, thick with betrayal. He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand to stop him. "No, Zach, this isn't your turn to talk. It's mine." I could see him struggling. His jaw tightened, and his eyes flicked to the papers in front of him. He knew. He knew it was over. I grabbed the next piece of evidence, the dinner receipt from the Chicago restaurant. "Explain this," I demanded. "You said you were, on a business trip. This looks like a dinner for two to me. A romantic one, no less." I tossed the paper back down. "And don't try to lie to me, Zach. I've seen the pictures. I know everything." His face went pale, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then he opened his mouth. "Olivia, I can explain." "Explain?" I cut him off. "How do you explain the picture of you and her on a rooftop bar? The one where you're smiling like you've known her your whole life? Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I wouldn't figure this out?" His eyes darted to the side, and for a brief moment I could see the panic in his expression. I pressed forward. "You lied to me for months, Zach. You spent our time, our money, building a life with her while I was left here in the dark, pretending everything was fine. And you want to explain?" He opened his mouth again, but this time I wasn't giving him a chance. "Tell me about Megan," I demanded. "Tell me how long this has been going on. Was it just the hotel stays, or was there more?" I was ready for him to confess. I was ready for the truth to come spilling out. I wanted him to admit the lies, to finally own up to the mess he had created. Instead, he did something I wasn't prepared for. I love her, Olivia," he said quietly, the words hanging between us like a sick joke. "I never meant for this to happen, but I can't just pretend anymore. I can't keep living this lie." For a split second, I froze. This wasn't what I had planned. I hadn't expected him to admit it so bluntly. The anger hit me in waves, but I kept it in check. "You're telling me you love her? After everything? After I've supported you, worked with you, helped you build this life together?" I shook my head. "You're a coward, Zach." He flinched at the word, but I didn't care. "You didn't just betray me, Zach. You betrayed everything we've built. You've destroyed our marriage, our trust, and you don't get to just walk away from that." I stood up, pacing now. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I wasn't about to let him see me break. "You want a way out? Fine, but not like this. Not on your terms." I pointed at the papers on the table. "You think this is going to end well for you? Think again." Just as I thought the confrontation was winding down, just as I thought I'd reached the peak of this gut-wrenching moment, I heard a knock at the door. I looked at Zach, whose face had gone white. "Who the hell is that?" I asked, confused, my anger momentarily displaced by curiosity. Zach didn't answer. He just stood up slowly and walked toward the door, his hands trembling. When he opened it, my blood ran cold. Standing in the doorway was Megan, the other woman, the one I had only known through emails and photos. She was standing there, awkwardly clutching a bouquet of flowers, her face painted with uncertainty. I thought I'd come over, Zach. I didn't mean to interrupt anything," she said, her voice shaky. I stood there, frozen. I looked at Zach, and the reality of the situation hit me all at once. He had invited her over. While I was sitting here, confronting him, she was walking into my home like she had a right to be here. The audacity. "Megan," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "This is the woman you've been seeing behind my back, Zach? This is who you love?" Megan looked at me, eyes wide, caught off guard. "Olivia, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I wasn't having it. "Save it. You're not the one I'm angry at here." I turned to Zach, my eyes blazing. "Get out, both of you." It was over. Zach and Megan left, their heads hung in shame, but I didn't feel a sense of victory. I felt a sense of closure, like a weight had been lifted, but I was still angry, still betrayed, still broken. The next few weeks were a blur. I took control of the finances, contacted a lawyer, and filed for divorce. The messiness of it all was draining, but I wasn't going to let it destroy me. The truth was, I didn't need Zach. I'd never needed him to feel whole. I had built my own life before, and I would again, but this time it would be on my terms. Months later, I sat at my kitchen table, looking out the window as the sun began to set. I had sold the house, moved into a smaller place, and started over. It wasn't easy, but I was proud of what I had accomplished. I had survived, I had thrived, and most importantly, I had learned that my strength wasn't in the people I loved, it was in the woman I had become. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know this journey wasn't easy, and it's one that many of us can relate to in one way or another. Whether you've faced betrayal, loss, or the gut-wrenching feeling of realizing someone you loved was never who you thought they were, just know you're not alone. I want you to take away this one thing. You are stronger than you think. Sometimes life throws us the toughest challenges, and it can feel like we're drowning in them. But just like I found my strength in the darkest of times, you can too. Your story isn't over until you say it is. If you've ever been through something like this, or if you've had a moment where you had to pick yourself up from the ground and keep moving forward, shout it out in the comments below. I want to hear from you. Let's empower each other, because there's nothing more powerful than a group of strong women lifting each other up. If you've made it this far, drop a message in the comments to show your strength, your resilience, and your determination to keep going. You've got this. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories of triumph, justice, and the power of the human spirit. Thanks again for being here and for letting me share my story. I hope you take a piece of it with you, and remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead us to the most beautiful victories.